It's time to predict Alabama's record this year. A matter everyone has developed an opinion on. You know they play 4 of the top 14 teams in the JP poll this year. You know they play 8 of the top 30 teams in the preseason JP poll this year. I say that because someone will be in these comments telling me they play a cupcake schedule. Facts be damned. Cupcake schedule. Same rule for Notre Dame. Doesn't matter if Notre Dame plays the Chiefs and the Vikings in week 3 and 4. They play a cupcake schedule. That's the end all be all. A lot of hyperbole in the room around Alabama right now. Sounds a little something like this. If they don't win 11 games this year, like if Alabama were to go 9-3 this year, then fill in the blank. And in that blank is just, it's all kind of stuff that's probably not true. The reality, regardless of what happens this year, the reality is they're loaded again next year. They got a 5-star quarterback in Julian Sayin coming in. The reality is, as long as Nick Saban's going to be there, they'll be in it every year. That's the reality. Now, this year, what we want to know is what's the best case, what's the worst case, and what's the most likely. Let's dive in. The best case for Alabama is always going to be 12-0 because the best case scenario with one of, if not the most talented rosters in the country and a team that will be favored in every game is always going to be 12-0. In that scenario, quarterback has been above average for them. And above average means like if it's Jalen Milroe, he's making good decisions. He's putting up 75 rushing yards per game. He's not turning the ball over. Milroe's got a cannon. Like people who think the passing game just evaporates if Jalen Milroe's their quarterback needs to think about things not through the lens of what they've had with Bryce or what they've had with Tua or Mac Jones. You need to think about the things through the lens of having a running threat at quarterback, having an extremely versatile run-blocking offensive line, having 3 or 4 backs that you have to be concerned with, and having speed in their wide receiver room. I don't believe a wide receiver 1 has emerged on this team, but they got a lot of speed in their receiving room. That is a recipe for explosive plays in the passing game because of what you have to account for on the ground. So it doesn't evaporate. Anyway, if that's all happened, if they are what I think they'll be on the offensive line, if that secondary is what I think they'll be, that edge rusher room, that linebacker room, if they are pretty much just what we think they'll be, they can go 12-0. They can go undefeated. But that's not the fun part of this segment. The fun part of this segment for most of you is, what's the worst that could happen for Alabama this year? 8-4. I think is the worst case for them. It's a very low number. 8-4 is the lowest I've gone and the worst case for Alabama in several years. It's only because of the risk you run in not having good quarterback play. They haven't even had to settle for good quarterback play. They've had, at the very worst, well above average to, in many cases, great quarterback play. But if they just have average to below average there, regardless of who it is, or if they never end up settling on a guy, and that wide receiver room's just a mess, and your leading receiver's like 680 yards or something like that, and they end up having to play from behind a lot, which in this scenario puts them in very unfamiliar and uncomfortable territory. And if their defensive line's not good enough, you forget the secondary. I think the secondary will be good in any event. But if their defensive line's not good enough, so you can shorten games on them, limit possessions, and when they do have the ball, they just can't move it effectively enough. There's an 8-4. When you look at their schedule, like I said, they play 8 of my top 30 teams in the country. So if you've got those questions and they don't pan out and you play that kind of schedule, you can lose 4 games. And if you're anyone other than Alabama, you could lose 5 or 6 of them. So only 4 is still indicative of how much respect I have for that team. The most likely record for Alabama this year, I think, is 11-1 because I'm extremely high on the team. The secret lies with that offensive line. That's why I've been pounding on that drum in the entirety of the summer and really coming out of spring. There are people around the program who think Eric Wolford, their offensive line coach, is the best assistant on that team. That includes the coordinators. So he's got all the talent in the world to work with. And I think that Caden Proctor coming in and securing that left tackle position, which he has, was a key to a lot of the other dominoes shaking out the way they wanted it to. I think they go probably 8 deep with guys they feel they can win with, so they have got a surplus of high-level NFL talent on their offensive line. Just hadn't set it lately. They haven't played at that standard lately. I think the ground game will be as effective as you've seen it in a long time. But what I am the most excited about with Alabama is their secondary and the depth and versatility in their secondary. I don't picture the kind of game this year that Tennessee was able to have against them last year. Don't picture that. Think they'll be very good. I think Kevin Steele, even though it wasn't a world-renowned hire as DC, is going to be good at the very least from a mental standpoint for the way that team plays. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or a five-time national champion winning football coach to have watched Alabama over the past 10 years and thought to yourself, defensively, they don't look the same anymore the past couple of years. I'm not telling you Kevin Steele is the key to overturning that, but the folks around the program who've been there a while, they loved the hire a lot more than just your innocent bystander. And I think that's probably why they did. But one more thing, if they go 11-1, or if they were to go 12-0, their special teams this year, especially with Kool-Aid being one of the best returners in the country, their secondary this year and their edge guys being able to force turnovers, it probably means they've played a more complementary style than you've seen them in 5 or 6 years play. There were some teams in the mid-20 teens that scored a ton of non-offensive touchdowns for them. That's the kind of team they have to be this year. I think they can be that. So I got sky-high expectations for Alabama. I'm putting them at 11-1, and that's obviously right there in the playoff picture. That's probably playing for the SEC championship. So I haven't sold my stock yet. But I know a lot of you have. I know the comments will be lively there. The good news is we will play the season out, and someone will be right, and someone will have excuses.